Call the meeting of the Design Adjustment Committee to order. Before we get started, I have to read an introduction. The Design Adjustment Committee's purpose is to establish clear and measurable review criteria for the consideration of major deviations from the city's Technical Standards and Specifications Manual, Building Design and Material Standards and Subdivision Standards. The committee does not consider housing type, cost of the proposed unit, occupants, building material, unit size, number of bedrooms, or the architectural design of the structures. These hearings are quasi-judicial evidentiary hearings. That means it's like a court hearing, and the committee's decisions are constrained by the standards in the ordinance and based upon the facts presented. All variance requests require 4/5 vote of the committee to grant the variance. Appeals of Design Adjustment Committee decisions are to Superior Court. The parties in these cases are entitled to an impartial board. If a board member has a fixed opinion on the matter, a financial interest in the outcome, a close relationship with an affected person, or has had any ex parte communication about the matter, please disclose that information to determine if a recusal is necessary. City staff will introduce the proposed project to the committee, and committee members may ask questions. The applicant may present additional information about the project, and members may ask questions. If anyone wishes to provide evidence at today's hearing, witnesses must sign in on the clipboard in the back of the room and be sworn in. Because witnesses are to provide sworn testimony, please focus on the facts presented, focus on the facts and standards, not personal preference or opinion. When a witness comes forward to give testimony, please come to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and speak clearly. At this time, staff will administer the oath for all individuals who intend to provide witness testimony.
All right, I'll ask that staff, applicants, and members of the public who wish to speak today will stand and raise your right hand. Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you.
Thank you. Our first item of business is approval of the minutes from last meeting. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes? And if so, are there any comments?
Mr. Chairman, I'd make a motion to approve the minutes.
I will second that motion. All in favor of approval of the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. Oh, that's right. Linda abstained because she wasn't here. First item of new business, 716 8th Street and Solomon Alley. Is there a staff presentation?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. This is evidentiary hearing number 1, located at 716 South 8th Street and 717 Solomon Alley. The site includes 0.125 acres and is located within an existing R3 residential district. The site currently contains 2 single dwelling units on 1 lot. 717 Solomon Alley is currently accessed via a paved concrete driveway fronting South 8th Street. These are photos of the existing driveway fronting South 8th Street. The applicant proposes to install a private access easement for the purposes of subdividing the parcel into 2 lots, utilizing the existing site conditions. The newly created lots would be conforming to the R3 lot area requirements. Section 18-663 of the Land Development Code states that no lot shall front on an alley except for lots within the 1945 corporate limits existing at the time of the adoption of this ordinance that do not have access from a street of a higher classification. 717 Solomon Alley does not have frontage along Solomon Alley. The sole point of access comes from South 8th Street. The proposed private access easement would utilize an existing driveway from the South 8th Street right-of-way. The existing driveway consists of gravel and concrete. The applicant requests the following relief from the Technical Standards and Specifications Manual. The Technical Standards and Specifications Manual specifies minimum standards for a private access easement. Private access easements require a width of 34 feet. The easement is 9.5 feet at its narrowest point and 12 at its widest. Relief is requested. Private access easements require a pavement width of 20 feet. The easement is 7 feet at its narrowest point and relief is requested. This concludes staff's presentation. I'd like my case summary to be entered in the record. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have, and the applicant is here as well.
Any questions for staff? And maybe this is a question for the applicant, do they not have access in the rear?
They do not.
Okay.
So they're asking for relief from both the width of the easement and the width of the pavement, correct?
That's correct.
That's currently an accessory dwelling unit that's accessed by the existing driveway? And they're just subdividing the lot?
That's correct. I think it's a single-family home.
So it's an existing house, right, okay.
That's correct.
Are there any, so they're not proposing to pave the full 9.5-foot width, they're proposing to leave the, 7 feet minimum, or minimum concrete drive?
That's correct.
Okay, I've got a few questions, but I can reserve those for the applicant. Any other questions? Thank you. Is the applicant here? Do they wish to speak?
I'm Faison Gibson, attorney with Murkison Taylor Gibson, and I'm here to represent the applicant, as well as John Wayne with Hanover Design. who's
Ma'am,
here
will you
as well.
speak closer to the mic?
Yes. Can you hear me? Closer. Let me lift it.
Thank you.
Okay. Faison Gibson, attorney with Murkison Taylor Gibson, and I'm representing the applicant as well as John Wayne with Hanover Design. The owner of the company, the applicant, was going to be here but cannot. He's had a death in the family. So I'm going to do my best to answer your questions, and John, of course, is going to answer technical questions. If there's something I cannot answer, we'll see what we can do, or we can request a continuance.
Okay.
Okay. So Zach gave a good summary, and I assume you guys have already looked at the application. What I would say is the houses, and there are two houses to answer the question. The applicant bought this parcel as one parcel as it exists in 2006, and the houses were already there. The houses were apparently built in the 1920s. He's renovated them, but those houses, along with many of the other houses on that street, are, been there for a long time. The driveway that is there, that is paved, has been used presumably for, 100 years, since the 1920s. That's the only driveway that's used now. The owner rents those two houses to two different tenants. There has not been any issue with the in and out from the back parcel out to 8th Street. So in our minds, we're not asking for anything to change, or we're not asking for anything additional to be built. We're just asking the ability to continue what is already on the ground, and how the property has been used for many years.
I guess I just would like some clarification in back on the exhibit that's on the screen. They show a gravel driveway off of Solomon. Has that been used historically to access this property, or just surrounding properties and not this property? Because it looks like there also might be a fence up.
Yes, just the surrounding properties. There is a fence there. There's some question in our mind as far as the title history, whether we should have direct access to that Solomon Alley driveway, but right now we're just assuming we don't. And
Then they don't historically
don't
haven't
use
used it.
Yeah,
Okay,
They
understood.
only use the driveway in and out to 8th Street.
And do you know if there's any, like, the 9.5-foot wide drive that's there now, it's paved at 7. Do you know if there are any other obstructions? I thought I saw a picture in the staff presentation.
Yeah, I think there is, yeah.
Okay, so there's no, like, obstructions other than that little bush? There's no, like,
There's not. I may ask John to weigh in. I think there's, a power pole. I think you can see it, that would maybe prevent us from widening it.
power pole is beyond the house, correct?
Yes, John Wayne, Hanover Design, yes, it's behind the house.
Okay, so that wouldn't affect ingress or egress, the power pole? Okay,
Yeah, and on that picture, you can see if you drove through the driveway and then it curves, and that's where the back lot parks. There's room for at least 2 cars, I think, is where they park.
Okay. Any other questions for the applicant?
On the survey that was submitted, it appears that some of the pavement is actually extending onto the adjacent property. Is that being counted in your 7.5 feet, or 7 feet of driveway width?
No, it's a total of a little over 9 feet total. So there's 2 feet that's across the property line, so the 7 is all on this property.
And do you have an easement for the 2 feet that's on the adjacent property?
We don't have an easement. We can certainly talk to the owner if, if we need to. I don't know that we need that for today's purposes, but
Okay. Any other questions for the applicant? Thank you. Again, I can't promise I won't ask you any additional questions later, but I appreciate it.
that's fine. Thank you.
Yeah. At this time, would like to open the public hearing. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak on this item? No? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing, which brings us to the discussion about the, let's see, is it technically 1 waiver or 2? 1.
Can I
So-
ask, Mr. Chair, can I ask for a clarification from staff?
Sure.
Zach, on table 1, you've got the requirement A is 34 feet, and then proposed is varying width between 9.5 and 12 feet for the easement. But then for B, which is the paved surface, it's showing a requirement of 12 and a varying width of 9.5 and 12 feet. But the prior bullet under number 8 indicated that the pavement width requirement is 20 feet, and it's 7 feet at its narrowest point. Is that what that A and B is supposed to be for, or the B for requirement and proposed?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
It's 7 edits. Yeah.
Okay, so they're proposing 7 feet of,
Instead of 20.
yeah, and I guess it would be varying to 12 feet, because when you get behind the house, it
Yep.
does widen up again. Okay. A question for staff. If this lot is, I assume it has not been subdivided yet, that's the whole purpose of the waiver. And when it is subdivided, would this be permitted anything more than the 1 unit? Would they be permitted an ADU by zoning?
I have to look at the dimensional standards. I don't know if it would allow that. If there's room.
They technically could be permitted to have an ADU on that lot, though you could place a condition potentially on units.
Would that be a possibility to place a condition that, I mean, I think that the technical standards, as I understand them, would require, if they did want to put a second unit in there, they would have to have a widened easement more. So like you're permitted 12 feet if you have 1 unit, as I understand it.
That's correct.
But if you wanted to put a second unit back there, you would have to widen it to at least 16 feet per the current city technical standards. So if somebody did want to do an ADU, I'm assuming they would have to come back to this board
That's correct.
to get a waiver for, okay,
That's correct.
all right. Just wanted to make sure that we weren't enabling a second unit by right.
And just to add to that, could each of these units, both 716 and 717, potentially have an ADU?
Yes.
Yeah, and there's nothing we can do about 716 because it has frontage, correct? Right, so that would be tight, but, okay. Any other questions? Any other discussion on this item?
The CFPUA shows the lot 717 served off of Solomon with their own water and sewer services with an additional utility easement extended beyond the alley. 716 is served off the front, what is that, 8th Street? So there would be no need to extend water or sewer down the access.
Okay. Thank you for that. I mean, there's definitely a site constraint. I feel better that this is an existing house that's 100 years old as opposed to a new one that's going to be built. So they're not really changing the way it functions today. It does give me a little bit of concern to what Linda brought up about the current driveway extends across the property line. If those owners potentially, you know, move that fence to the property line, which would make it nearly unpassable at 9.5 feet. So I guess my first question would be to fire. Does fire have any concerns with access to that rear structure?
No, we wouldn't be driving on the driveway anyway, because for one, it's not wide enough for us, but two, it would support our vehicles. It's not over 150 feet, so we would just stretch a line down the driveway to that house.
What about emergency service, other emergency services, like an ambulance? Like if there was something, how
Well,
would
an
that?
ambulance would probably try to go to the house in the back. But if they were unable to get to it, they would
Just,
stretcher them out to 8th Street.
and what is the width of an ambulance, do you know?
Most ambulances are a little over 9 feet wide.
It's very tight. I mean, it's the way it is now.
Yeah, I mean, it's been that way for as long as it has, and ambulance, like I said, they would park on 8th Street and just stretcher someone from the back. They're not gonna try and go down that driveway. Even by looking at the pictures, if you see the edging of the roof,
Yeah.
it encroaches even more, so it would probably be even tighter at the top.
Right, and that was where I was like, well, could we not condition them with additional width, you know, paving up to the structure? But when you're not really gaining much by doing that, because you've
Yeah,
got,
I mean, you would have more concrete at the bottom for the truck, but you wouldn't have the clearance at the top because of
yeah,
the
you got
boxing of the house.
side view mirrors and stuff like that that extend
Well,
out from,
they stand so tall, they're like 11 and a half feet tall, so.
what are the, any other thoughts? Do we have a motion on this item? I mean, there's clearly a site constraint, you know. It's clearly been accessed this way for a long time. I wish they had access from the rear as well, but I guess, you know, in an emergency, that area could potentially be used but there's a fence there. This is tight. I don't know. Yeah, if there's a fence there, you wouldn't have an access point there. I guess, I don't really know how to phrase this question, but if the variance was not approved, I mean, it would just remain one lot with two residences. And I guess the benefit of this is they could sell it off, the back lot.
I would make a motion with the conditions of no ADU structures and the existing condition. It's going to remain whether we vote yes or no. So, I mean, I would vote in favor for the variance with a condition.
No ADU structures proposed for 717, the rear lot.
Or 716, both.
Anybody have any thoughts on that? Can we get
I think to Eric's point, it's consistent with, you know, its existing conditions. It doesn't change, putting a lot line down the middle isn't changing what is out there today. But I would agree that if they wanted to the condition of restricting ADUs unless they were to come back and address, and come back with a different request. And at that point, then we could look at whether or not they need to widen pavement and do other things.
Okay. All right, I will second that motion with that condition. Any other discussion? Hang on.
If, for staff's benefit, can you clarify what that condition is, please?
I believe Eric said, unless it's not a permitted condition, is no ADU structures permitted for 716 or 717, unless you feel like that's an unnecessary condition. But, I mean, if you put an ADU on 716, it is going to limit the access to 717.
I defer to this committee. I just want clarification.
Okay.
For staff.
I saw a question from the applicant. Is that, can we entertain that question at this point?
Yes.
Okay.
You can hear from the applicant.
So on the condition, I totally agree with 717, but I think that meets the code, that the narrow easement would not allow an ADU on the 717 already, so we're fine with that one. As far as 716, I have no reason to think an ADU would be built, but I'm a little hesitant to agree to that on behalf of the owner without talking to him. And I'm not entirely clear on what purpose that would serve. As far as 716, which is, legally existing, has direct access to 8th Street, there could not be an ADU within the private access easement area that we're showing. But theoretically, if they could fit an ADU in that backyard, which again, I don't know why they would, it's pretty tight, but I hate to restrict them here today from doing that.
Well, my response to that would be the required width of a private access easement is 20 feet. If we're permitting them 12 because that's what's paved, there is some benefit to having that open space behind there for turnaround or, whatever. If they want to occupy that space with an ADU, you're restricting, you've got an increase in parking, you're limiting the access through that easement area. I mean, to be truthful, why wouldn't the easement widen back out to 20 feet after the edge of the structure? I mean, that would meet standards. It's kind of unnecessary in my mind, but there's a required 12-foot paved width, but the easement itself is required at 20 feet, and they're requesting a reduction in that. So I don't know. It's just you're further limiting the use of that space. So I can see the benefit to it.
That's fair. That makes sense. I think the open area is just a backyard. It would not be used as a driveway or a turnaround, but that's fair. I think that's probably fine. I think the applicant would be fine with that.
Okay.
Yeah, so if they wanted to build an ADU, they would just have to come back and go through a process.
That's correct, right? Okay. Is that the only question? Okay, thank you. So we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor of approval of that waiver with the added condition, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That variance is approved. Item number 2 is the Cinema Drive CDMU. Is there a staff presentation on that one?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. This site's located at 111 Cinema Drive. It currently includes 8.58 acres. It's developed with an existing vacant movie theater use, as well as associated parking, and is zoned RB regional business. The site currently has direct frontage along Cinema Drive, as you can see on the image in front of you. The applicant's proposing a mixed-use development utilizing the commercial district mixed-use standards within the city's land development code. This includes 146 residential units and 10,000 square feet of commercial space. There are 2 access points shown on the plan in front of you, to Cinema Drive, one to the plan, I guess it'd be northwest, and the other to the south. The Land Development Code requires parking facilities meet the ingress and egress requirements of the city's technical standards. The technical standards stipulate that the maximum length of a private driveway be no more than 500 feet. The applicant's proposing a driveway that exceeds the maximum length by approximately 311 feet, and a waiver is required. The standards for approval are listed in your case summary. There's no preliminary plan associated with this request, just the design adjustments. I'd like my case summary to be entered into the record. That is my presentation. Happy to answer any questions. The applicant's here as well.
Thank you. Any questions for staff? I guess my question is, was there discussion about relocating the driveway on the southern side to a more central location to, better comply with this rule? Is there some reason why that doesn't work? Or is that an applicant question?
I'll probably defer to the applicant on the ultimate design chosen in the driveway location.
Okay, but there's no like driveway across from this that would, there's sort of no reason why it would need to be here other than just preference?
I don't believe there's a driveway alignment, but I could be wrong. It may be close to the driveway that's that O&I CD property to the south.
Okay,
Ultimately defer to the applicant, though, on the reasons for the driveway location.
okay. Any other questions for staff? Thank you, Pat.
Thank you.
I do need to ask the attorneys, would this be appropriate time to have prior knowledge of this project and disclose that information, or should I wait for another time? Okay. I need to disclose prior knowledge of this project. I was the project engineer for the pre-TRC and identified the variances proposed today. I no longer work with the city and represent CFPUA only. I do not feel as a conflict of interest for me to remain on the committee, but I need to reach out to the applicant to see if they have any opposition for me to remain.
Okay. Does the applicant wish to speak?
Thank you all. My name's Brad Schuler. I'm a land planner with Paramount Engineering, and we are assisting the property owner with obtaining the necessary approvals they need in order to develop this site under the city's CDMU standards. Shown here as the subject site, it is the location of the old AMC movie theater, which closed a little over a year ago. Our clients are currently going through the TRC process in order to redevelop the site with student housing and commercial space. This proposed site plan includes 7 multifamily buildings and 1 mixed-use building. As noted, we are requesting an adjustment to the 500, 800-foot rule, which would require the drive aisles for the project not to exceed 500 feet from the public roadway. We are requesting an adjustment to allow them to extend approximately 300 feet more past that standard. There's really 2 main reasons why this rule is challenging to meet for the site. One is the overall size of the site. Both the width and length of the property exceed 500 feet. And 2, because of the sharp curve that's in Cinema Drive. We are located in the driveways near the far ends for 2 reasons. One, to provide for a better sight distance from that curve, but also to provide some area for on-street parking, which the client is wishing to install with this project. Overall, we are improving the site from what exists today. So currently there's about 1,500 linear feet of drive aisles that extend past that 500-foot limitation. Again, our plan proposes only 300 feet past that. And we are also reducing the overall impervious of the site as well and providing more green space. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Any questions for the applicant?
Did you consider putting a drive connection between buildings 1 and 2 to reduce that distance and that separation?
You're saying building 1 and 2?
Yes.
So it's, you're saying, I just want to make sure I'm clear. So in between the big mixed-use building and the second building directly
Correct.
to the right
To
of
connect
that?
those parking lots and shorten that distance.
It's not something that we considered. Obviously, that's mixed-use structure there. We want to have a lot of access to it. That kind of square there in Building 1 is where the commercial space is going to be. We also have about 10 bicycle parking spaces right there. So the idea was to have that be kind of a plaza and more of a pedestrian area than a vehicular area. But I did not take a direct look and see what that would impact if we put a drive there. But I think that would conflict with the design in which that's aimed at being more of a pedestrian area than a vehicular area.
Okay. Thank you. I can't guarantee we won't call you back up again, but thank you. At this time, we need to open the public hearing. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak on this item? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. We have just the one variance to consider on this project. Good exhibits. I would credit the applicant and staff for that. It really painted the picture well, so I will say that for what it's worth. Good circulation internally. I did have the same kind of question that Linda did. It seemed like there were, ways to make this site more compliant, and I guess it would, fall on us to determine if they needed to do more. Any thoughts? Any comments from the group? If not, we need to take some action on this. I don't know. I do kind of wonder if it would work better if Building 2 slid over and the drive aisle connection was between those two. But that might create a pinch point in that, somewhere else. I don't know. I mean, the overall size of the parcel does seem to factor in here. And, the access points are generally being maintained with the previous, movie theater use. So, I don't know.
Yeah, I really don't have much concern over the variance being requested, honestly. I mean, fire department's across the street. I think they're gonna have great response time there, if they have to travel another 113 feet, or access Building 1 directly from Cinema Drive, if that were a necessity.
Understood. Any concerns from fire on access for the site?
No, basically it's the existing driveways, so it's more or less it's the same parking lot. They just putting the buildings there instead of cars.
Okay, and you're okay with the circulation and access? That's acceptable?
Yeah, and I can't really see, but the on-street parking, it will not go around.
Yeah, it looks like it's just
right here
right in
between
front of
4,
buildings
3.
3 and 4. Yeah, that looks to be where I believe it's located, per the site plan. Is that correct? You can just shake your head, yes or no? Yes, okay. That's correct. All right. Well, I will make the motion to approve this waiver as shown, due to the overall size of the parcel and good circulation among drive aisles.
I'll second.
Any other discussion? All in favor of approval of this waiver, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Variance is approved. Thank you. We do have one last item of business on this agenda, and that's adoption of the 2025 meeting calendar. I haven't honestly looked at this to see if there's any conflicts with holidays and such, but I'm assuming that's been vetted. So, do we have to take action on this, right? Like okay, approval. So I will,
I move approval of the 2025 calendar.
thank you. I will second that. All in favor of approval of the 2025 calendar, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
All right. So that's the last item of business. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.